Hello and welcome. Let's discuss this question that came in the year 2015 and is related to the topic of oceanography. The question is, tides occur in the ocean and seas due to which among the following? First statement is gravitational force of the sun, second statement is gravitational force of the moon, and third statement is centrifugal force of the earth. To understand this question, let's try to look into different types of tides and what are the effects of it. Now this is basically because of the movement of moon and the position of sun, the tides are occurring, low tides and high tides are occurring. We can see the movement of water. So this GIF explains because of movement of moon and the position of the sun, tides are occurring. Now there are different types of tides like spring tide and neap tide. Basically, spring tide occurs when the sun, earth and the moon are in straight line. This happens in two conditions: during full moon day, when this is the position, earth is in between moon and sun, and also during new moon day, when moon is in between earth and sun. So during this position, when they are in straight line, the water in the earth give rise to high tide in this position. When moon and sun are in a straight line, this creates high tide because of attraction, gravitational attraction of moon and sun. During neap tide, the earth, sun and moon are perpendicular to each other, that is forming 90 degree, and the resultant tide, high tide, because of the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun, the resultant high tide is produced in this region. Also, flow or ebb. Flow is basically rising tide. When the water is rising, that is known as flow. This is also known as flood tide. And when the water is receding, that is known as ebb. So when the water is rising, that is known as flow or flood tide. When the water is receding, that is water is going downwards, then it is known as ebb. These are the terms associated with flow and associated with tides. Also, there is difference between tides, waves and surges, storm surges. Now tides are happening because of the gravitational pull, whereas waves are because of the transfer of energy. Waves are not basically the transfer of water. The water doesn't move, the energy gets transferred. When wind is blown over a water surface, then the water particle, they start circulating. And because of this circulation in the direction of wind, there is transfer of energy. And because of this transfer of energy, when this particle is rotating, similarly the adjacent particle starts rotating, then again because of this adjacent particle start rotating and wave is generated. This is known as the crest of the wave and this is trough of the wave. So basically wave is nothing but the horizontal movement, horizontal transfer of energy, horizontal transfer of energy along the coast towards the coast of water, of oceanic water. Whereas surges occurs due to meteorological conditions. Meteorological conditions like strong wind or difference in atmospheric pressure. So if because of wind or difference in atmospheric pressure, the water in water body moves in vertical direction, then that will be called as surges. And because of gravitational pull, if there will be upward or downward movement of water, then that will be called as tide. Also, some key facts regarding tide is the highest tide is recorded in Bay of Fundy, which is located in Canada-USA border. The highest tide in Bay of Fundy is the average height of tide, high tide is around 16 meters. Whereas the average height around across the world is of 3 feet. So that is the difference between the high tide in Bay of Fundy and the tides, average tides in around the world, across the world. So these are found near Nova Scotia region. So if we look into the question again, tides occur in the oceans and seas because of gravitational force of the sun. Yes, gravitational pull of the sun give rise to tides. Gravitational force of the moon also give rise to tide, and the movement, apparent movement between them give rise to different types of tide, that is and neap tide. Right. Also, centrifugal force of the earth give rise to tides. How? Basically, centrifugal force is if anything is rotating, then the particle in that object has a tendency to move outwards. If anything is rotating in circular direction, then the particle has a tendency to move outward. This tendency leads to rise in water body, which creates tide. So centrifugal force of the earth is also responsible for the creation of tide, and gravitational force of the sun and the moon are also responsible for the creation of the tide. So if we see the options, then D, 1, 2 and 3 is the correct answer. Thank you.